Give us a feel about where this case is after the report that came out from the Daily News on Friday night.
All right, let me just bring you up to speed real quick. I'm DeAndre's personal attorney handling the NFL matters, but I am also his criminal attorney. I have not been admitted pro hoc vice in Florida because there is no case yet for me even to make an appearance on. So there was questions raised on that issue. So you guys could take it as gospel that I'm his criminal and his civil attorney with Brad. Brad is a friend of mine, been 20 years. We're associates. We practice together. But there's no reason for me to go down there yet. So with that information, let me take this just quick step by step. Number one, I'm very concerned about that Pat Leonard interview because the search warrant that he says the Daily News got through an Oprah request is a search warrant on an ongoing criminal investigation. I don't even, nor does Brad, have that search warrant yet. So we intend to file motions into the court to find out how that search warrant was obtained by the Daily News. But I'm not even bothered by the search warrant being obtained by the Daily News because if one reads the search warrant carefully, they will see the conversation, text messages going back and forth between Baker and Johnson are about where you go and how much, and I'm going to the city to get the money. Those texts from DeAndre Baker were orchestrated by Cohen and I to flush these extortionists out. There was never any intention to pay these extortionists. All we were trying to do was to find out where the meeting was, how much money was being transpired between the individuals. And Cohen and I reported to the FBI and to the detective what was going on. The detective triangulated Mr. Baker's phone, triangulated it to my house in Fort Lauderdale where it was myself, Brad, and DeAndre texting Johnson. And the reason is simple why we did such a thing. Because if there's a hostage situation and the hostage people call you, you don't say, hang up the phone. What do you say? Where are you? How much? Give me proof of life. Give me information. So the text messages going from Baker to Johnson were to solicit the information of the extortionists to find out how much they wanted and where they were going. We knew they were going to Greco's office because that's what was texted to us. And we reported that to the authorities. Baker never, nor did his attorneys, ever pay the extortionists any money. And the reason we didn't pay any money is because we didn't need the affidavits because this has been an extortion from minute one. Now, Leonard also raised the issue that
Patrick,
wait,
hold on, Patrick, wait. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can I just
go
back
ahead.
up for a second here? Okay.
Yes,
So if I'm getting this right, you and Baker's other lawyer,
Brad
Cohen,
Cohen, my associate partner.
Your associate. You guys are working with the FBI to try and sort of sniff out this extortion case. Like, why wouldn't you just tell the? Why would you come up with a text message that appears to incriminate your client?
Well, how is it incriminating the client? Look at the wording. I'm going to the city. Well,
I'm in the
city now getting cash.
City,
how much to bring? I'm trying to get there ASAP.
Right, I'm in the city getting cash. How much do I need to bring? I'm getting there ASAP.
It kind of makes it seem like he's going to the lawyer's office to bring money there.
Exactly, because how are we supposed to find out where to go and what to bring? We didn't go. We didn't do it. We never went
like the
and paid
intent
for
to
the
do
affidavits.
It
let me
seems
ask
like he has the intent to go pay someone off, though. And I'm just asking you. We don't know. We're not lawyers. But it kind of looks like the intent is to go to a lawyer's office to pay off the victims because they have the sort of TikTok of this closed caption TV about a bag of money going into the lawyer's office where these four victims, alleged victims, then change their story, and it all kind of adds up in terms of the TikTok. This kind of makes your client look guilty now.
TikTok on this. Baker's not in the video, and Baker did not pay. Also read the warrants, because the four victims are pretty specific on how much money they got. The video is specific on what individuals were there. The video is specific on that it was at Greco's office. The affidavits are specific that Greco was doing the affidavits. Nowhere does any of those affidavits exculpate Baker. And if Baker paid like everybody thinks he paid, the affidavits would have exculpated Baker.
So then why is Johnson on social media talking about the fact that he took care of the case?
I can't answer why a criminal does what a criminal does. I have no idea what Johnson's saying.
So then, Patrick, what transpired then the night of the barbecue? None of this happened. There was no robbery. He was there playing video games
that night. 100% no. Baker committed no armed robbery. We've said that since day one. 100%. Now, Baker, Cohen, and Patel do not have affidavits from the 4 extortionists. The reason we don't is because we didn't pay. We didn't pay because we never intended upon paying, because it's illegal to bribe witnesses.
Of course it is.
Right.
Why I was so
whose
sure
55 grand was it, Patrick?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any idea whose 55 grand it was?
You got to ask Dunbar and Dunbar's people, not us, because we're not there. Baker is in my house texting this guy to ascertain the information as to where is this payoff going down. How much money do you people want? What is Baker supposed to say? Is Baker supposed to text back, I'm not paying you guys, leave me alone? How are we ever going to prove the extortion in this case unless we solicited the information from Johnson and the victims?
Well, so you had...
If he's
wait, hold on a second,
Patrick, he's innocent, right?
Well, but Patrick... If he's innocent, he's innocent.
He's innocent. You don't have to lay a trap. If he's innocent, and if you have 2 other witnesses, that Pat Leonard was telling us that Brad Cohen said he's got 2 other witnesses who can totally exonerate DeAndre Baker. Why lay the trap? Why does it matter?
Because
if he didn't do anything, he didn't do anything.
Extortionists. We are giving that over to Moretti. We are the ones who asked Moretti to investigate Johnson. Cohen specifically had a conversation with Moretti in front of me. You got to find out what this Johnson's up to. You got to do this. You got to do that. Because we already knew before the police what Johnson was up to.
Well, but Patrick,
okay,
let me ask you. So, if you're trying to expose the extortionists, how much did DeAndre Baker agree to pay them?
Nothing. We never agreed to pay a dime.
Well, then how are you exposing them then? Because there has to be a number there.
Because they wrote back. Bring a bag of money. You got to read the rest.
I did read it. I understand, but I do know this. In the report, there's also multiple phone conversations between Johnson and Baker. Are there not?
What do the phone conversations say?
They don't have it, but there's multiple conversations between the two sides.
Exactly my point, guys. They don't have the conversation. All they have is text messages back and forth between Johnson and Baker. Because, again, I'm going to tell you people simply, when somebody gets kidnapped, you call the kidnappers and you tell the kidnappers, or the kidnappers call you and say, we want X amount of dollars. What are you supposed to tell them?
But, Patrick, listen,
But,
Patrick, explain it to
explain dialogue to flush them out.
Explain something to me, though. If I'm trying to expose somebody that's trying to extort me out of money, there has to be some conversation between Baker's side and that side where a number is discussed, right? Maggie asked you about the 55 grand. You said, ask Dunbar, Greco, his attorney. Greco has since stepped down from the case. Well, there had to have been a number.
I yelled defamation months ago, or a month ago.
There had to be a number. There had to be a number here that was discussed where you were willing, where Baker said, where the side comes at, pay me 30 grand, 35 grand, 50 grand, whatever the number is. There was no monetary number was ever discussed?
No. In fact, if you guys read the warrant carefully, which I've been trying to tell Leonard to do, the final text from Johnson to Baker, and his curse words involved, essentially says, get over here, these people are leaving. Because Baker never intended to go. Read the warrant carefully.
Read it.
The text from Johnson to Baker says, where are you? These guys are leaving. So how is Baker there paying them?
So why
would the warrant? It says it right there.
Right. No, Patrick, I think that we both know that Baker never. Well, there's an unidentified person who's on camera, but I think that we can tell that Baker never showed up to Dunbar's attorney's office.
That unidentified person, I believe, is going to come out to be Dunbar's younger brother. That's what investigation has revealed so far to us.
But to you, but the most important thing to you was that it's not Baker. So I guess here's what I'm wondering. Here, as a non-lawyer, right? This is what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, does it matter really whether Baker actually showed up, or does if you have a text message that looks like Baker is intending to pay off these alleged victims, is that enough to get your client in trouble? Even if he never did it, just having the intent.
Because he texted our direction. He texted our direction, and we immediately reported it to the police. These people are trying to hold us up. They're trying to be extortionists.
Okay.
If we didn't do what we were doing, what were we going to report to the police? If we just told Johnson, go, F yourself, so to speak, he'd hang up the phone, and we wouldn't have known what a meeting was. We knew the meeting was at Greco's office, and we told the police that. The meeting's at Greco's office. How do you think the police found out it was at Greco's office? From the text messages with Baker and Johnson.
All right, Patrick.
This is so simple, guys.
Okay.
So simple.
All right, explain it. Explain something. Listen, explain something to me here.
Go ahead.
Why would Baker and Dunbar are identified, right?
They
did this robbery at a bar.
Greco does anything. I can't.
No. But why would, if I'm innocent here, if DeAndre Baker and Dunbar are completely innocent, they did nothing wrong, they're trying to get extorted.
I never said Dunbar did nothing wrong. I have no position on what Dunbar did. But as a common sense individual, think about something. If you're going to pay to make somebody change their story, are you worried about the story? Yes. Baker is not worried about the story.
So DeAndre Baker, he did nothing wrong that night. He was just there playing video games.
100%.
Nothing at all. It was just Dunbar.
His Madden game. Listen, he was logged into his Madden game. He brought his Madden football game to the location, hooked his Madden football game up on a big screen TV, was playing Madden football, left after the ruckus, left his Madden game. So I ask you guys something, common sense. If you're going to rob somebody with intent, do you bring your Madden football game and leave it there, which can identify you?
No, well, listen, there's not a lot of common sense that goes into this story. I mean, let's be honest, Patrick.
Patrick, we're talking to the attorney for DeAndre Baker who called us when Pat Leonard was on the phone. So here's a question. If you guys are working so closely with law enforcement to try to get the extortionists, why is Baker facing anything right now? If law enforcement knows your position...
That's a great question. Great question. And follow this as an answer. The incident took place on May 13th. We are essentially July 13th. We're 2 months from the date of the incident, and the state still hasn't charged him. So you answer your own question. If this was such a good case and Baker was so guilty, do you think the state would be holding it? Or is the state investigating potentially lawyers who paid off witnesses who are extorting people, individuals like Johnson who are running this whole charade? That's why the case hasn't gotten dismissed yet. I mean, I'm simple saying Baker did nothing wrong. The witnesses now have come out to be exactly what I told the New York Post months ago. Go look at the 4 witnesses. Go back and read my article, to Paul Schwartz, my statements to Paul Schwartz, the only person I ever told. Paul, these 4 witnesses are extortionists. These 4 witnesses are making up stories. Look at the witnesses. Go back and read my article. And what has the state done? They have done exactly that. They've went and looked at the witnesses. So we thank the state completely for doing what they're doing. And this is why it's taken so much time. Because the case isn't just an allegation against DeAndre Baker. This is a shakedown against him from these 4 people who have already recanted their stories once, twice, or more times than that. So what kind of case would the state have with 4 witnesses who are changing their stories depending upon how much money they get that day?
Right.
Baker never paid anybody.
Well, their initial statement then changed it after they got a payoff. Patrick, what's the relationship of Johnson and Baker?
Johnson was a Pop Warner coach, I believe, down in the Miami area. So they know each other from like Pop Warner days. That was their relationship there.
Remain in contact throughout Baker's life?
Not much. Just ancillary contact, off season when DeAndre goes and stays with his family down in Miami. He's at his parents' house now. And
also, Johnson said he felt responsible for bringing the NFL players to the party and also felt responsible for bringing the alleged victims, extortionists, however you want to read this, also to the party. But he invited DeAndre Baker to the party that night?
100%. 100% invited DeAndre. Johnson did. 100% invited DeAndre there. No
Patrick,
question.
What's the timeline here, like moving forward for your client, for DeAndre Baker? What are you looking at?
This is one of the problems. The season hopefully would start July 28th, or, them to report.
Right.
We're just hoping that the state looks at this enough and deep enough to eventually give Baker a dismissal and proceed against the parties they should be proceeding against, the 4 extortionists, the one conspirator, Johnson, and potentially the lawyer for being involved in it. Because if you notice something, guys, read the warrant. Never does it say Baker paid. Never does it say Patel or Cohen are involved with Baker paying or anything. All it says is what Baker wrote Johnson, which Baker wrote Johnson at the direction of us to ascertain and to flush out this extortion.
So when Johnson,
what are we supposed to say?
So when Johnson is texting Baker, we're
with Baker.
You're in the car in the city with Baker.
Couch at my house in my office.
So at that time, Baker's not even in the city.
There is no city. I told Baker to put the city because one day I knew all this was going to blow up. What city? When you say the state of Florida, do you ever say city? Or when you're in New York like us?
No, I get it. I'm just trying to connect the dots and put it all together, Patrick. So you're getting that text from Johnson. You're sitting right with Baker, and you're telling Baker exactly what to respond to Johnson, and then this shows up in this warrant.
Of course, 100%. Okay. Now go back and look at something else. The date of the warrant is June. We're in July.
Right.
Baker's still not charged with paying off witnesses. So the state is putting together their case.
I understand that. So Patrick, let me ask you. There was a story going into that barbecue that Dunbar and Baker had lost a big money dice game days before.
That story was created by Greco, and if you guys go back and look at my information and my releases of information to Paul Schwartz, I told Schwartz Baker is suing Greco for defamation. I told everybody this from day one. Greco is trying to take the heat off himself by posting that thing to the newspaper. What do you give a picture with smiley faces on individuals in the picture for? What do you gain out of that? What he's gaining is trying to protect himself and his client. That's why Baker's suing him for defamation. It's pretty easy. It's not
so,
complicated.
Patrick, at the end here, you expect Baker to be fully exonerated?
Well, I expect him to be fully exonerated, yes. And number two, I seriously take issue with Pat Leonard saying that unnamed Giant sources have said they're cutting them, they're doing this, they're doing that. My contact with the Giants, which is directly with the Giants, has never brought up such a conversation. Because if the Giants would cut him and next week he gets dismissed, what are the Giants going to look like?
Well, Patrick, I mean, here I'll tell you, I reached out to the Giants on Saturday. You know what they told me? It's a disaster.
I don't doubt it's a disaster.
So, I mean, we could go back and forth here. We can go back and forth, but with exactly. So, I mean, Pat does a good job. I'm going to defend Pat here, and he broke the story for the Daily News on Friday night, and he's not making stuff up. So you can talk to different people and get different sources and get different what that individual might be feeling. But I spoke to somebody within the Giants on Saturday and texted him and had just a quick response. What's your reaction? Disaster. So,
hey, Patrick, what are the Giants telling your client? What are the Giants? What have they told your client, Baker?
I'm going to get you in a minute. I support the position. It's a disaster, but it's not a disaster created by Baker. And the facts at the end of this case are going to prove that. It's a disaster? Absolutely. Why is it a disaster, guys? Because a lawyer at his office is having witnesses paid off. A disaster because they're even considering paying witnesses. A disaster because I've been saying it's extortion to begin with. So is it a disaster?
But Patrick, I mean, but you just told us
if he's innocent, it shouldn't be a disaster.
Well, right, if he's innocent, and here's the deal, Patrick. You just said you talked to somebody within the Giants, and they haven't broached it that way. That everything's hunky-dory.
They have not broached it any other way than they're going to sit back and wait for the facts in the case to be decided. So I don't think it's fair to DeAndre to slant it as, he's going to be cut by the end of the week. I don't think that's fair to him because he's innocent until proven guilty.
What have the Giants been telling him, Patrick? We should tell you you're listening to WFAN, Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66 WFAN, WFAN FM New York. We have our mystery guest to get to also, and we apologize to the mystery guest. But just curious, what have the Giants told your client recently?
Just to stay away. at this point, clear up all your legal matters, and once the legal matters are taken care of, then we're going to have a sit-down and discuss everything. Never been discussed to cut, to do anything to him, ever. So I want to. Okay. I don't think it's fair to put that out there, that potentially the Giants are going to cut him. I don't think that's fair. I have no problem with Pat Leonard. I don't know him. But I don't think it's fair to Baker to say that unnamed sources saying at the end of the week he's going to be cut, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. Is it a disaster? Yes, we all agree it's a disaster. Anytime someone's involved in a criminal case of this magnitude, with this publicity, with potential lawyers paying off witnesses and witness tampering, is the case going to be a disaster? But that doesn't make him any more guilty or innocent than the facts are going to prove.
I got you. So July 20, when football gets going here, Patrick, you think everything right now, if you had to guesstimate legally, do you think this is cleared up for DeAndre Baker by the end of the month?
I hope so. The only reason I hope so is because I don't know what more the state's going to investigate on ancillary issues. The case is over. I mean, you guys even said that before. There's 4 witnesses that have been paid off and changed their story. That the only case here is DeAndre Baker, whether he committed a robbery or not, based upon these 4 individuals who are worthless, whose testimony is not credible. So I can't see how the state's going to proceed on that. I mean,
and Patrick, your side, you guys have 2 witnesses that go completely the opposite way, right? Correct?
Independent witnesses that were at the house that night. Correct. We got them later on, and we didn't disclose it because we wanted to ascertain the veracity of the affidavits. We don't just go out and hand affidavits to a court like Greco did. You understand something, guys? At the bail hearing, Greco handed those affidavits to a judge, knowing they were paid for to be gotten. We did not hand them to the judge because we didn't have them. They didn't exculpate our client. We didn't take place in a bribery, extortion, and witness tampering scheme. So we never had the affidavits. We still don't have the affidavits.